Happy Blog Action Day! Welcome to The Book of Life, a show about Jewish books, music, film, and web. I'm Heidi Estrin. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida. Additional support comes from the Association of Jewish Libraries. Blog Action Day aims to unite the world's bloggers, podcasters, and videocasters to post about the same issue on the same day to raise awareness and trigger a global discussion. On October 15th, 2008, thousands of people are posting on the topic of poverty. In our Blog Action Day episode, we talk to a couple of authors who've written moving picture books about the power of generosity. First, however, we'll hear from Sayan Taid, co-founder of Blog Action Day. Sayan and her husband Collis are bloggers from Australia, but they are currently doing some world traveling. I caught up with Sayan in Montreal, Canada. Sayan, tell us about Blog Action Day.
Well, Blog Action Day was a concept that we really came up with by chance. I'm a blogger. My husband is a blogger. A lot of our friends are bloggers. And we were sitting down and talking together one day and realized that we had a very large combined audience and that our friends who were also bloggers had an even larger combined audience. And we thought to ourselves, well, what would happen if we put all those resources and that big audience to work by just talking about one subject on one day? And we weren't sure what that subject would be yet, or really even what we were going to do specifically, but we just thought, we've got this huge audience, what could we do which would be positive? So Blog Action Day really came out of that. Last year was the first year, 2007, on the subject of the environment, and what we asked bloggers to do was just all post about the environment on one day. So that was really successful. That went really, really well, way better than we ever could have imagined. It started out being a sort of a small thing, and it just grew and grew and grew, and suddenly, the European Union Environmental Minister was involved, and the United Nations Environmental Programme was involved, and it seems that everybody really just wanted to do something positive with these resources we all had. So that was 2007. This year's 2008 on poverty. So really we're just trying to get it going now.
What's the goal of Blog Action Day?
The goal of Blog Action Day is really to get people talking, to get people discussing, asking hard questions, coming up with solutions, really just like brainstorming, for lack of a better term, and then from that taking action. So, there's this phrase, I read it the other day, poverty could be solved within our lifetime. Now, I don't know about you, I really don't know how that's going to happen, but I know that if nobody talks about it and nobody tackles it, it's definitely not going to happen. We need to start taking as many positive actions, small and large, as we can to get it going, because otherwise we're never going to get anywhere. So that's really where Blog Action Day is coming from. It's meant to be a step in the right direction.
Why did you choose the subject of poverty for Blog Action Day this year?
Well, last year we had the environment, and that was an issue which was very close to our hearts, but it was also an issue that we thought to a certain degree was fairly easy for people to tackle, because people already know what they can do about the environment. Not on a big scale, but they know they can recycle, they know they can turn off their lights, they know they can save water, things like that. Poverty is a far more complex issue because it's one of those things that I think people really feel very powerless about. They really want to do something, but they don't know what to do. So we almost didn't go with poverty. Leo Babuta, who runs a blog called Zen Habits, he originally said to us, listen, I really want it to be about poverty. He's from Guam. He said it's a subject which is incredibly close to my heart. And we were thinking, will people take it on? But then they did. It's funny because how we came up with it was firstly Leo, and we were a little bit sort of on the fence about it because, as I say, we were worried that it would be too much for people. But we were watching this movie Amazing Grace. It's about William Wilberforce, who was an anti-slavery pioneer who basically he put a stop to the slave trade in the British Empire. Anyway, It was a really amazing movie, and we were watching it and we were saying to ourselves, well, you know, would we have been the sort of people who would have stood up and said the slave trade is just wrong? Or would we have, you know, gone along with everyone else and gone, oh, well, you know, if the government says it's okay, if everyone else says it's okay, it's not a problem. And he said to us, well, I think the important thing is not to think about that, but to think about what is the equivalent in our day and age. Like, what is the thing that everybody's sort of overlooking now? Everybody's going, oh, it's not ideal, but, you know, let's not deal with it, which is the thing that in 100 years' time everybody's going to be saying, I cannot believe that people thought that was okay and didn't do anything about it and didn't stand up. And after he told us that, we discussed it and we were like, okay, we have to do poverty. It may be hard, but it's just one of those things. So that's how it sort of all came about. One of the things which has been so fantastic about doing this last year and this year is how eager people are to do something positive. Like, I think often people don't know what to do, but when they're given an opportunity to do something, no matter how small it might be, they're like ready and raring to go. There's a temptation to go, oh, well, you know, what difference is this going to make? It's just a bunch of people talking and donating a little bit of money. But it's a means to get talking. It's a means to start getting things happening. And these issues are not going, there's not going to be one solution. It's going to be millions and millions of little movements forward, little steps. So, yeah, that's the way we look at it. And it's really nice that everybody else has such a positive viewpoint about it as well.
Sayan Taid, thanks so much for speaking with us.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, thank you, Heidi. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Aubrey Davis's picture book, Bagels from Benny, won the Sidney Taylor Book Award, the Canadian Jewish Book Award, was shortlisted for the National Jewish Book Award in the U.S., and won a couple of other non-Jewish Canadian awards. So, you know it's good. In the story, Benny's grandpa bakes the most wonderful bagels, and Benny tries to thank God for this bounty by leaving fresh bagels in the ark at the synagogue. A poor and hungry man finds the bagels and believes they are a gift from God, and Benny learns that by helping another person, he was indeed thanking God. The Book of Life's Canadian correspondent, Anne Dublin, visited Aubrey Davis at his home in Toronto to learn more.
Tell us about Bagels from Benny. I'm always interested to know why a writer or a storyteller tells the stories he or she does. So what got you started on that? What inspired you?
Desperation. I've been invited to Montreal to tell stories and present some of my earlier books. So I've been there 2, 3, 4 times. So I knew I needed some new material. So I was desperate to find a new story. And I remembered hearing a story told by Alec Gelser. He was a tremendous storyteller. And I'd heard him tell that story twice. I liked very much the way he told it, known as the Chalot in the Holy Ark. So the challenge was, if I was going to tell this to children, how would I transform this story, which was obviously not for kids, the way it originally was presented, and at the same time maintain the integrity of the story.
Well, so what inspired you then to change it from chalot to bagels?
I'm not sure. The main thing I had to do to change it to a child story, I thought I should have a child protagonist, and in the original it's a man from, I think, Spain, who goes to the Holy Land, doesn't speak the language, and so he's misunderstanding. But I changed it to a little boy, and his misunderstanding is just his naivety. The bagels, I'm not sure. I think I didn't want to leave it as challah, and I think I wanted another Jewish bread, and what more archetypal Jewish bread than a bagel, so at least in the Ashkenazic tradition. So that's what I went for.
Well, I think it's great. I keep thinking of that advertisement for bagels. You don't have to be Jewish. So obviously the story has a lot of universal appeal to many people. Your book has received a lot of recognition, including a Sidney Taylor Book Award and a Canadian Jewish Book Award. Why do you think it struck such a strong chord with so many people?
Well, you mentioned 2 Jewish awards. I think it's what connects very much with the Jewish tradition of tzedakah and tikkun olam. And there was also a very emotional ending to it, and people responded with great feeling to the end of it. So those 2 things, I think, made it very appealing.
When Benny inadvertently helps a hungry man by leaving the bagels in the Ark, I just wonder, the man pledges afterwards that he will do good to others because he received good. So can we talk a little bit of how Benny's good deed extends to other people?
It's a matter of an action. Any action has rippling effect. So for good or ill. So, and whether we're conscious of it or not. I mean, Benny's done this thing with very good intent. I'm not aware of exactly what he's doing. Nevertheless, the act itself has consequences. And I think that may represent, in part, what it's like to be a human being. There are things every day we say and we do. We think we're doing one thing, they have other impacts. And it takes a tremendous amount of perception to see what in fact is going on.
Aubrey, you're a storyteller and you're very familiar with folk tales. Why do you think so many folk tales deal with the theme of poverty?
I'm not sure it's so much a theme. It's present in folk tales, and I think it represents something about human beings. I don't think this is literal. It's probably our condition from the fall of Adam, even, that this is a great poverty, impoverishment of the human being, from where we were to what we've become. We've lost something, and we're trying to at least get it back, if not move beyond. So it's our condition, and that's where we all start from. So you'll see many stories will start, there was once a poor man, woman, couple, there are orphans, there's all manner of ragged beings in folk tales. We don't bring the kind of reading to folk tales that Jews have traditionally brought to the Torah. And I'm not saying that they're equal, but I'm saying that the kind of approach to the folk tale, at minimum, should have that similar kind of approach. It tends to be very literal. Either it's just entertainment, or among the Jewish people, I've seen this again and again, what is the moral of this story? And you wouldn't do that if you were studying the sacrifice of Isaac. You wouldn't necessarily say, what is the moral of that? That is not the way Jews have looked at that story traditionally. The best of the folk tales, I think, need that kind of open, prolonged engagement to begin to understand what they are and what they can do for us.
So tell us about your next book.
The next book is A Hen for Izzy Pippick. It's actually, again, a familiar tale to Jewish people that I took and actually set in the Kensington Market in downtown Toronto. It was an old Jewish market. It was with vegetables and chickens, and it was just fish shops, great cheese shops, and bagel bakeries.
Sure.
And it's a story of a little girl this time who finds a chicken, and she looks in vain for the owner of the chicken and brings that chicken home and tells her mother she wants to keep the chicken. And then, of course, the chicken lays eggs, and the eggs hatch, and chaos in the house and spill out into the streets. I think it was in the Babylonian Talmud, the original version, Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. But coincidentally, the same story is in the Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. So I like the story. I've written it up in it's Toronto, it's the 30s, it's a Jewish family. But I've also noted the origins of the story at the beginning. I just think it's one of those things that I just love to find in this world what's common.
It sounds wonderful. Yeah, and when's it coming out, Aubrey?
2010.
Okay, that's not bad. bad for publishing.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not, especially picture books, they have
it takes a while.
takes quite a while.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to reading your book when it comes out. Aubrey, thanks so much for speaking with us today. It's been a wonderful experience. I've really enjoyed hearing your comments.
Thank you, Anne.
And all the best in your career.
And you too. Best in yours.
Thank you.
Prolific author Eric Kimmel has a new book, The Mysterious Guests, a Sukkot story. The guests are the biblical patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, three of the Ushpizin, the forefathers who are said to visit each sukkah during the holiday of Sukkot. These guests bring justice to their hosts, rewarding a kindly poor brother while teaching his rich and stingy brother a lesson. We spoke to Eric Kimmel by Skype at his home in Portland, Oregon. Eric, tell us about the mysterious guests.
I was doing a visit in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, had a wonderful time there, and in the evening they said that Nell Carter is going to be singing at the Jewish Community Center. Do you want to come? And absolutely, was I going to turn down a chance to see Nell Carter? I love Nell Carter. And she gave a tremendous performance, and not many people know that she was Jewish.
She
so
was?
we can claim, yes, she was.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, it's a surprise, but she was. So anyway, come back to my hotel, and I get there, all the lights are off. There's a power failure. And here I am in this dark room looking out over Cherry Hill in Philadelphia, not ready to go to bed. I think, okay, I'm sitting here. May as well come up with a story. People for years were asking me, why don't you do some books about the lesser well-known Jewish holidays? But I needed an idea, and the best thing I could come up with was the legend of the Ushpitzim, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob coming to visit the Sukkah. So what have I got? I've got Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then I thought of that other wonderful story about the two brothers and their plot of land that became the Temple Mount. And each one thinks, no, the other one is more needy than I, and goes in the night to give the fruits of his harvest to his brother. And I thought, okay, they're two brothers, but they're more like me and my brother who don't always get along. So they're two brothers. All right, one is rich, one is poor, one has a fancy sukkah, the other has a poor but friendly sukkah. One is all show on the outside, one is really pure and good on the inside. And then the Ushpitzim are going to come to the sukkah to teach a lesson. But the source of the story is a power failure one night in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, after I'd seen Nell Carter.
Did Nell Carter's performance actually influence the story in any way? Or that just happens to be what you were doing that day?
I think there was something about seeing Nell Carter that night that jarred something loose. I was in such a good mood. You really felt her heart. The love just came out of her. The thing that really counts is the heart. What's inside is more important than what's outside. And that's what the story is about.
Now, let's back up and explain a little bit about what a sukkah is and what the holiday is about.
Oh, okay. Sukkot is really the last of the major agricultural festivals. It was celebrated in ancient Israel after the harvest of the first fruits, and this is a time when they would go up to the temple bringing the produce. And the sukkah, the word means a booth, a shed, a shack, is when you're in an agricultural country. I didn't know this as a kid living in New York, but since I've lived in the Midwest and out here in Oregon, I see it all the time. When the crops are ripe, you've got to get them in before the rains come or the weather changes. So people are out there in the fields just about 24 hours a day. Rather than walk back to the village, they live in little huts out there. So they save the time that they would spend walking back and forth. So in memory of the fact that our ancestors were agricultural people, no matter where Jewish people are, living in cities, living in Poland where winter is coming on, they would build a little hut called a sukkah, and they would decorate it with the fruits of the field. For generations, Jewish people have been an urban people. largely because we were pushed off the land and we lost our land. But at heart, we are agriculturalists. Our roots are in the soil.
Now tell us about the mysterious guests themselves. Why do Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob come to visit people's sukkahs? It sounds a little bit like Santa Claus.
It sounds a little, well, in a way, it is kind of like Santa Claus. In world folklore, the mysterious guest who comes to bring gifts is a very powerful motif. I think part of it has to do with our connection with our history. These are living figures. When you study Talmud, you read the conversations between the rabbis over the centuries, and you almost get the sense that, gee, time is gone. These figures are in a room, and they're talking to each other, even though they may have lived in completely different eras, and they're also talking to you.
You're a storyteller, and you're really familiar with folktales. Why do you think so many folktales deal with the theme of poverty?
There are a lot of poor people, and they tell stories about the lives that they lead. Also, most religions of the world have a lot of sympathy with the poor people. Charity in the Jewish religion is not an option. No, you have a responsibility to the poor people. If you treat poor people with kindness, maybe God will have sympathy on you. God will have Rahmanas on you. In Catholicism and most forms of Christianity, the sympathy is with the poor people. I think that's why so many sympathies, so many stories are about poor people. And I frankly think it's the poor people that created most of the stories. What do they have to do at night? Sit around and tell each other stories. And maybe the roof is leaking. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. But if you listen to a story, it'll take your mind off it and make you feel a little better. And also it sows the seeds of revolt as well when we're talking about stories like Jack and the Beanstalk. You know, who's the giant? Well, it's the Lord living in his castle on the hill, and we're down here and we have nothing. But one day we're going to climb up there, knock off the Lord, and take his stuff. So on one hand, acceptance, submission, endurance is in these stories, and also indignation and revolt is in there too. It's a fascinating, very complicated kind of thing.
That's a really interesting answer. So you think that stories help people survive difficult times, but at the same time maybe help people to actually change the difficult times. So do you feel that stories actually have the power to change reality?
Oh, I definitely think they do, because if you can envision it, you can do it. The thing that always amazes me is we live in the world of science fiction. The fact that I am talking to you over a computer instantaneously and you're on the other side of the country is astonishing. How did this come about? Well, before we could do the technology, someone had to envision it. And that's the key. The story puts the idea into somebody's head. And so many of these stories about poor people involve change. The character may start poor, but in the end, well, they end up as the prince or the princess, like in The Mysterious Guests.
I like how the poor brother asks his guests to bring something to the table, but it doesn't have to be food. It could be a song or a riddle or something. Do you feel that for the guests, being able to contribute something is as important as receiving the food and the hospitality?
Oh, absolutely. It's the difference between a handout and earning something. You know, in our Jewish traditions, we always insist on preserving the dignity of the recipient. And I think, was it 7 degrees of charity that Maimonides sets out? And the lowest form of charity is where I give a handout to the person begging at the door, because then he's embarrassed and ashamed every time he runs into me. And the best form is where it's completely anonymous. So in Ezra's Sukkah, yeah, everybody's a guest. You come here, but bring something. And your contribution, something to eat, a song, a story, makes it a party for everybody, and you are as important as everybody else. This isn't a soup kitchen. This is something that we as a community create, and that's the difference. It doesn't come from me to you. It comes from all of us. Folk tales talk about the issues that concern people, and nothing has changed. I mean, 100 years ago, they were talking about the same issues of immigration, poverty, distribution of wealth and power. But it's a conversation we're still having today.
Eric Kimmel, thanks so much for speaking with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Heidi. Thank you for inviting me. I wish everybody a happy Sukkot. And if strange people show up at your sukkah, invite them in, because you never know who they are.
The Book of Life is a podcast service of Congregation B'nai Israel of Boca Raton, Florida, at cbiboca.org, and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries, online at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilach Makers Klezmer String Band at freilachmakers.com. Additional background music was provided by the Klezmer Company Orchestra. Listen to our interview with orchestra leader Aaron Kula in the November 2008 episode of The Book of Life next month. And check out their website at klezmercompany.com. Visit our podcast website at bookoflifepodcast.com or listen to the latest episode by phone at 916-313-3820. We welcome your comments and questions at bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and happy reading.